And greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, and loving life. I want to remind everybody hit that like, share, and subscribe button for me. There's a PayPal link down in the description section below. Anybody wants to share some love, it's always appreciated. Every little bit helps. And the StreamYard link is down there for anybody who wants to join the panel. I am having some streaming issues, so I'm hoping this is coming through. It says that it's coming through at least on El Perro. Somehow we're having issues with Heckle-Bus and Keith Little channels. It did not come through on those. So I am going to see what I can do about that. But in the meantime, don't have any remedy at this point. So we'll see what we can get to from here. Like I said, having some streaming issues, so I'm having to come from one of my backup channels to help the situation to get this information out. And yes, Jason Crapo says he can see on El Perro, but it is not coming up on Keith Little or Heckle-Bus. As far as I know, that's what they're telling me. And I've been having problems getting into StreamYard from any of those other profiles there. So we're coming to you from another one and still streaming to El Perro. I'll figure out what happened with Heckle-Bus and Keith Little eventually, as well as what's actually initially happening with the other accounts. They're all through Google. So it's probably a Google issue. I don't know yet. Anyway, let's see from here what I can share. Looks like I can share this other window, of which I can then go to here. Yeah, that's working out. So what we have here is a Cambridge University Press document, and this is just a summary. I've actually got two of them before we get into the centralized authorization file. As it relates to the IRS accounting and all that. And that's directly related to the Social Security account because that is an enumeration through birth, and where they enumerate a individual, and that individual's name and number identify a record, that Social Security record, and its enumeration is a taxpayer identification number. It is not yourself. It is a person that you can represent. And Jason says, thank you for your info on cellular salts. Have made a difference in my life and my wife. Awesome. Appreciate it. All glory goes to the knowledge, which is the true benefit, folks. So let's get into it here. This is Chapter 16, an introduction to the law of charity. And so we're going to talk about charity and philanthropy here shortly. And it says, introduction, charity is a deep-rooted element in human behavior to provide emotional, spiritual, or material comfort to those in need is an instinctive aspect of social behavior. So the instinctive aspect is the charity part, where it takes upon charity in the aspect of an immediate remedy of some sort, an immediate relief, not remedy maybe, but an immediate relief. And then the social behavior is the philanthropical side, where the charity aspect in a social mechanism is more directed to the actual effect at the end. So you have charity organizations that don't just give money, but they want an effect to help prevent people from being homeless, or help the people that are homeless get out of their homelessness. And like I've expressed, A lot of these social behaviors as we have today through this government don't provide for that. And with people's proper comprehension of the informed use of credit, we might be able to start extending our own credit to our own communities locally instead of having to depend on that federal funding, and thereby have a more philanthropic effect on a minor scale individually that should grow and is reinforced by religions and ethical precepts, extolling it as one of the most ennobling forms of conduct. See generally Chesterman, Charities, Trust, and Social Welfare, 1979, Chapter 1. In the words of standard legal text, Tudor on Charities, 9th edition, 2003, page 1. Elaborating on the words of Sir William Grant, M.R., in Morris v. Bishop of Durham, 1805. 1805 is what they're referencing. In its wildest sense, the word charity denotes all the good affections that men ought to bear towards each other. Not their interpretations, but what they ought to objectively as materially effective, and to a grander scale, more effective, not just singularly, but effectively, exponentially amongst all of us. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about my freedom of expression. Singularly is a PowerPoint, but it is more imperatively exponentially supported by everybody else's right to know. I need your support in that to help me support that simple expression. If you don't want it, that's what makes it hard. If you don't want the knowledge, the true benefit, then what do you really want? And again, that's just my opinion. The benefit is the knowledge. And at its best, charity invokes a warm response. There is a touching depth of pity and sympathy shown by the following message sent with a donation in 1966 to the Aberfan Disaster Trust Fund. Quote, please use this small amount in any way you wish. I was saving it up for a new coat. Oh God, I wish I had saved more. Yours sincerely, a mother. Nightingale Charities, 1973, page 178. The Bob Geldof-inspired Band-Aid Trust appeared to strike a similar chord when remarkably raising £69 million in 1985 in aid of famine relief. And the fundraising antics displayed on Red Nose Day, a clown troupe, commonly raised in the region of £50 million for comic relief to be used for a wide range of charitable purposes. Perhaps the most striking of all in recent times was the public response to the Disasters Emergency Committee tsunami appeal in January 2005, when £392 million was raised via some 2.8 to 3 million telephone, text, online, and postal donations. You know, the Postal Service is responsible for that conservation easement under the Wildlife and Fisheries Act here on American soil. You suppose that might be what they're trying to impose on those foreign lands through these wars and stuff? Through all these disaster funds and things like that? I don't know. Don't you think you have an equal station in life to be able to provide for the funding, provide for the donations? See, that's what tax really is when we talk about the IRS tax that comes from TID, which means gift, or 10% that you give of your profit and your abundance to those in need, to the community. And that's the true way you pay your TIDs. your 10%. See, that's what I used to do in my contracts. Instead of paying it through the IRS as a I-9 independent contractor and doing my own contracts, in the contracts it was written that 10% of the proceeds above and beyond the bills and expenses would go directly towards one of the local community nonprofit charitable organizations currently operating, and they were part of the structure of the contract. During meetings, that we had minutes of the meetings to keep track of all the terms and conditions that were employed within. It's called being competent to contract and having the trust in the people that you're providing that public service with. See, that's my true public service. Everybody's got a public service. That's one of the presumptions of the 12 presumptions of the Roman court, is that there's a presumption of public service. Yeah, your presumption of public service is a little different than mine, though, because as a public service to my fellow brother and the lands that they steward and everything, my public service is redemption to the land and redemption to my brothers who have sold off their belongings and now need a redeemer. Because I'm a stranger and sojourner with the one that redeems me, and I fear not, for he's called me by name. I am his, a stranger and sojourner with him in all of his lands, which are not to be sold forever. So I know where you get all this monetary stuff and why you need it, but of course there's got to be some kind of figment of imagination for you to keep a record of it. So to enhance that record, we're going to make sure that it's true and accurate. That's all we're doing. So, but there is another aspect to charity. It has never been wholly free from moral ambiguity. In other words, independently, each one of us has some kind of moral aptitude, is what I'll call it, a level of morals. And those levels of morals are so ambiguous, so varied and different because of our cultures and societal structures. They may or may not encompass other people's rights. This is why people think they have more entitlement to do things, and why we have these cultural, what do they call them? False cultural appropriations. You know, that goes to not so much a moral aspect, but maybe a health aspect. You know, maybe somebody is living a certain lifestyle, and the dread style is more apt to help them with their health in that lifestyle, rather than all the messed up 543 different types of shampoos you could have a choice of. They're all still choices. Even among primitive tribes, the act of giving has been found to represent an assertion of power over the recipient, recipients who are obliged, unless they can repay, to show some form of deference or obedience to the giver. So this is the aspect of somebody thinking that they're rich and that you're poor, and so they're going to provide charity for you, and provide you a home in their community, and they're going to dress you up in their uniforms and clown clothes. And all of a sudden, it's Heil Hitler. You're one of Hitler's willing executioners, doing what you're told because they were so nice to you. I serve no one but our Lord. He provides every piece of clothing I have. This is not merely because they may then be more likely to receive a further gift, but because receipt, if not accompanied by a counter gift, or what they call repayment, in some way acknowledges inferiority. So again, like I said, postal donations as a matter of equal station to show there's no inferiority. Diplomatic post according to your high school diploma. Continue your education so you can properly go out amongst the world with proper knowledge to communicate with those that you come upon. And when you find those that use different terms, or maybe even the same words that you don't know, and somehow something gets screwed up, you better start looking at them again. I tell people this all the time. Unlearn what you've learned and re-educate yourself by doing further research. And again, don't believe me, don't believe the neighbor, don't believe the government. For crying out loud, don't believe your mother. The point is to do your research so you know. That's the only way you can get the benefit. I can explain it to you, but I cannot comprehend it for you. I can only do my best here, showing you what I'm reading and how I interpret this reading. So let's get on to the next one. Okay. And this one here is 7, and it's I don't know why it says 7. It's a section 7 or something, I don't know. But it says effective altruism and ignoring charity's symbolic power. See, charity has a symbolic power that we were talking about earlier, and if you ignore it and don't reciprocate acts of kindness, you won't have the effective altruism. So this is the philanthropy, and that's what altruism is about, is trying to get a true effect, and that's the final outcome, showing that their charitable intent symbolically matches up with the effect, and therefore it holds its charitableness. Our discussion of the inherent symbolic power of doing good and being seen and widely acknowledged as a good person because you do things for charity demonstrates intangible power relations that shape the world around us and require sustained theoretical analysis. This is what makes it so hard, is when we're dealing with other people and we don't know what their theories and perspectives and philosophies and things like that are. This is why it's important to go on the basis of a moral set of standards that are objectively more preemptive than others. And that's the sanctity of life. Everybody has this sanctity of life and an instinctual survival instinct, an inherent survival instinct. They're the opposing balancing mechanism. You have a survival instinct that says you will do anything to protect yourself, and then that sanctity of life is the caring instinct to do the same for something that's relatively close to you. We have seen how the act of fundraising can manipulate the symbolic power of charity to bounce people into giving donations to certain causes. This is the false patriot and the false church, where they pass that tray in the church to pay tribute to our Father which art in heaven through a charity program, through philanthropy of a false patriot, using false money and not the money of the Lord. We have seen how young people struggle to negotiate in the negotiable instrument system, as well as the symbolic power of charity online. This is why I talk about this metaverse and its psychological effects and being aware of what it truly is. It's purely, no matter how anybody looks at it, they can only get 0.1% of the true perspective of anybody on this metaverse. It's the tip of the iceberg, which is only 10%. Of the tip of the iceberg that you see on here, you're only seeing 10% of that. Of that 10% that you see, of that 10%, you're only getting 10% coherence and competence of that message. So you're really only getting 0.1% of anything I tell you. I understand that from my perspective, and that's why I'm just going to keep driving it. Sooner or later, that 1% will grow, and along it's all those little seeds being planted along the way. Witnessing both their friends take advantage of their good deeds to present themselves one way, and how individuals themselves are wary about their own charity may look to others and be misinterpreted. And this also goes to the aspect of being aware of your own charity and being shut out, or shutting others out so they don't take advantage of you because you understand you're being misinterpreted. Suffering context collapse. This is why it's so important to understand the context of the communications we're in. The words really do mean a difference. We have seen how the position of charities in society as bodies we once automatically saw as just and as right and just, giving them sway in terms of lobbying. In other words, they're presenting themselves as the body of charity, when in fact, again, they could only have that body of charity by being dependent upon the layman in that church that they pass that tray to. But they do it in the name of the church. Why don't they do it in the name of John Joseph Doe, James Joseph Doe, Mary Ann Doe? Because you're supposed to listen to the message and not the messenger. Shouldn't be done in anybody's name but the name of Jesus. Are seeing their position as experts come under threat. Absolutely. And their opportunity to take advantage of symbolic power diminishing because of both sector scandals. Absolutely. Keep diddling in the middle, you pastors. Oh, did that slip? I'm sorry. And and it's not just the pastors, it's everybody they hand those records to. And a general social malaise. This is the hedonism that the society is turning to. Nobody really gives a shit about the children anymore. They're caring more about themselves because they're victimizing themselves and fighting for their feminist rights, their gay rights, their transgender rights, their civil rights. And again, none of them gives a rat's ass about the next generation and what about their rights. While you screw them up, bring them up in this transgender world, teach them that they can make a decision about what gender they are at the age of 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9 years old, and convincing them that they have the right to make a medical decision to change that, but they can't have tattoos yet. This is insane. That's the social malaise, insanity, and it's general across the board. Alongside growing distrust of mega philanthropy. These are all the mega churches and these mega federal government funds, all of it. That's mega philanthropy. They're all going for an effect. They don't care about the immediate relief. By the time anything gets to the philanthropic ends, the just need for the rightful acts is already past, and it's already so overwhelming you will never meet the philanthropic needs. It will keep festering worse and worse. This is the interest concept. The more you pay into that interest system, instead of understanding your informed right of or informed use of credit, you will always fall victim to the interests of somebody else with their words. We have seen how the symbolic power of charity leaders was instrumental in the collapse of the Kids Company, as the right motivations became impossible to say no to, and passion becomes a cover for bad practice. What a more convincing statement to help me come to realization of my own faults and my anger and passion, and expressing that and learning how to calm down and be more passionate about it, but be blatant and truthful. Like that little slip I had a few minutes back. So hopefully the message will come across better. And we have seen how a yearly outrage over an otherwise respectful fundraising symbol in the poppy demonstrates how the power of charity becomes weaponized, erupting in a quasi-nationalistic demand for enforced participation. Hitler's willing executioners, the supply and demand chain. They need the body of the people for the corporatocracy and the capitalist. What this shorter penultimate chapter wants to do is introduce an alternative way of thinking about charity, the effective altruism movement, and explore how its proponents deal with the concept of the symbolic power of doing good. When that movement's central desire is for us to see past the symbolic power of charity, to be able to ignore it, so we can throw off shackles of clumsy emotion and really focus on putting charity to work for as much good as it can muster. And again, this is why I say my right to freedom of expression ultimately is a valid right and has a great power in it, but it is a much more effective power when it is supported by the imperative and ultimate exponential power of everybody else's right to know. That's the benefit, is the knowledge, and that's the exponential power of the benefit, and that's done in charity. Effective altruism has at its core a simple idea, which is that when doing good, we have a duty to do the most good we can. This is again one of the reasons why I say I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back or not. That's not going to be a part of what I'm doing as good, and I'm not going to allow that to be a distraction, again, to the exponential and more imperative and more powerful right of everybody else and their right to know. I'm not going to let people distract me from that and interfere with that because of their hatred and disrespect. That's why I hold my platform the way I do. And again, that's why I hold my channels the way I do. Imperatively, it's my Authors Guild to help protect myself. If it weren't for me being preemptive like this, I wouldn't be able to do this stream for you tonight. They've been locking me out on StreamYard on my other Google accounts and stuff. So thank God this one's not synced. So let's get back to it, because the next one is 42 U.S. code. Oops. Am I streaming the... There we go. 42 U.S. code 405. Evidence, procedure, and certification for payments. Remember, we talked about payment upon death, or payment on death. That's what we're talking about still. Evidence, procedure, and certification for payments. So, certification for payments, payment on death. So, in order for there to be a payment on death, there has to be a procedure, which means you have to have death first. And there has to be evidence of that death. And we're going to read some stuff, but I want to look at this one here too. Wages. And we're going to see if we can find this stuff here. I've got some things. Let me see here. In the event an individual is incorrectly identified as deceased in the records furnished by a state to the Commissioner of Social Security under this subsection, an individual provides the Commissioner with the necessary documentation to correct such identification. The Commissioner may notify the state of the error in the record so furnished and inform the individual source of the incorrect data. In order for the state to administrate an estate in probate, there has to be record of a deceased. They have no authority to do so otherwise. Scott versus McNeil. The Court of Probate has no power to appoint an administrator to the estate of a person who is in fact alive. What else? Well, let's go back up to the top. But I want to read, the Commissioner of Social Security shall have full power and authority to make rules and regulations and to establish procedures not inconsistent with the provisions of this subchapter, which are necessary or appropriate to carry out such provisions, and shall adopt reasonable and proper rules and regulations to regulate and provide for the nature and extent of the proofs and evidence and the method of taking and furnishing the same in order to establish the right to benefits thereunder. This is the enumeration at birth, and the prior individual known as mom, who gave information on a form and was known as an informant. Creating another minor account, a connected minor account. Administrative determination of entitlement to benefits. Social Security Administration makes a determination of entitlement to benefits upon enumeration at birth and says, Mom, you're qualified to apply for a Social Security number for that newborn infant. Born in a spell of illness. Findings of fact. Oops, did that slip? Hearings, investigations, evidentiary hearings, and reconsiderations of disability benefit terminations, subsequent application. So this stuff has to be first. Finding of facts before you can subsequently apply. What is it? 21 U.S. Code or 21 CFR 422.103. Who can apply for a Social Security number? The Commissioner of Social Security is directed to make findings of fact and decisions as to the rights of any individual applying for a payment under this subchapter. So when you go to court in these administrative courts and that judge gives a finding of facts, there is an individual applying for a payment under this subchapter. That individual is not you, it is someone else. The officer that stopped you alongside the road and issued that traffic citation is an individual applying for a payment under this subchapter using a statute of the state. And they have to have that Social Security number in order to apply. They use your name and address and birth date on that Social Security or that driver's license or state ID to reach that information, because that is subsequent information to the Social Security number and the enumeration at birth. Remember, when you go to the DOT, Department of Motor Vehicles, to get a Iowa ID or a Iowa driver's license, they require you to take a Social Security card so you can prove to them that you are the authorized representative with the enumeration at birth certificate. As an authorized representative, what are you representing? In your residential status, through that documentation, you are representing a United States business. Any such decision by the Commissioner of Social Security which involves a determination of disability and which is in whole or in part unfavorable to such individual shall contain a statement of the case in understandable language according to the Plain Writing Act, setting forth a discussion of the evidence and stating the commissioner's determination and reason or the reason or reasons upon which it is based. Upon request by any such individual, or upon request by a wife, divorced wife, widow, surviving divorced wife, surviving divorced mother, surviving divorced father, husband, divorced husband, widower, surviving divorced husband, child, or parent who makes a showing in writing that his or her rights may be prejudiced by any decision of the Commissioner of Social Security has rendered, the Commissioner shall give such applicant and such other individual reasonable notice and opportunity for a hearing with respect to such decision. And if a hearing is held, shall, on the basis of evidence adduced at the hearing, affirm, modify, or reverse the Commissioner's findings of fact in such decision. We're talking about the enumeration at birth decision. Any such request with respect to such a decision must be filed within 60 days after notice of such decision is received by the individual making such request. The Commissioner of Social Security is further authorized on the Commissioner's own motion to hold such hearings and conduct such investigation and other proceedings as the Commissioner may deem necessary or proper for the administration of this chapter or this subchapter. So when we find that it's not proper for the administration, that's what we're pointing out. And we're proving that enumeration at birth, the assignment of a Social Security number for authorized representation in that capacity as a citizen, a resident, a United States citizen, is not of the proper capacity. I have a private capacity, an equal station in life that will allow me to do so through a change of the enumeration, a redress of the assignment of enumeration at birth. In the course of any hearing, investigation, or other proceeding, the Commissioner may administer oaths and affirmations, examine witnesses, and receive evidence. Pay attention here. Evidence may be received at any hearing before the Commissioner of Social Security, even though inadmissible under the rules of evidence applicable to court procedure. They're telling you here this is not a court procedure. This is a correction of the records, folks. Because decisions as to the rights of any individual applying for a payment under this subchapter. This is 42 U.S. Code. That's health and welfare. You applied for health and welfare, and that was not a court procedure. However, through that, there's an administration where they trap you into administrative court procedures. This was the commingling of private data elements with public records. The enumeration at birth and its presumption that you are already a resident and citizen of the United States. That you gave birth, moms and dads, you big dummy corporations. You gave birth to a little franchise. So let's go down. Did I go past it? Wage records as it goes to your big dummy corporations. and then you go out and get an employment application to work at McDonald's. A corporation working at McDonald's flipping burgers as an employee. Funny. Wait till I write my book. Okay, it says wage records. For the purpose of this subsection, the term year means blah, 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 term, time, and limitation, term, survivor, data, who survives such individual, or parent who survives such individual. Informant is the mom, and she is a parent, whether she be married, divorced, widowed, or otherwise. Term period when used with respect to self-employment, means data of self-employment income. What's self-employment income different than wages? Why is there a difference? It goes down. 2B. 2 is on the basis of information obtained or submitted to. Obtained by or submitted to. The only way information can be obtained by or submitted to the Commissioner of Social Security is somehow through mom and dad. And then, of course, when you turn 18, because mom and dad already submitted information and the public education system that indoctrinated them, they too help that public education system indoctrinate you into believing that you too must file for a Social Security card and continue on in that indoctrination. And after such verification thereof, as the commissioner deems necessary, all mom's got to do is sign that document. That's the only thing she needs to do. Give them that information to the baby and sign that document. We'll do all the rest. The commissioner of Social Security, we understand she's in a spell of illness. We'll do all the rest. She can take a break now. Shall establish and maintain records of the amounts of wages paid to and amounts of self-employment income derived by each individual and of periods in which such wages were paid and such income was derived. So on one side of the counter, it's a wage. On the other side of the counter, it's called self-employment income. Okay? And upon request shall inform any individual or his survivor or the legal representative of such individual or his estate of the amounts of wages and self-employment income of such individual and the periods during which such wages were paid and such income was derived, as shown by such records at the time of such request. According to the IRS, folks, an estate doesn't exist until the guy is deceased. So what estate are we talking about? See, we're talking about generation skipping trusts here, folks, and the estate of a decedent that is long passed, and there is record that he or she is your grandma and grandpa, or your great grandma and great grandpa. Moms and dads. See, each record is linked to another record. See, that minor account that mom had was linked to your minor account until you take control of those accounts and let them know that there is no estate. Therefore, there can't be any estate taxes, and therefore the grantor sells all the property to the trust or grants it to the trust for proper use in possession. You guys catching all this? In carrying out the Commissioner's duties under subparagraph A and subparagraph F, the Commissioner of Social Security shall take affirmative measures to assure that Social Security account numbers will, to the maximum extent practicable, be assigned to all members of appropriate groups or categories of individuals by assigning such numbers to aliens at the time of their lawful admission to the United States, either for permanent residence or under other authority of law permitting them to engage in employment in the United States, and to other such aliens at such time as their status is so changed as to make it lawful for them to engage in such employment. 2. This is the doozy. To any individual who is an applicant for or recipient of benefits under any program financed in whole or in part from federal funds. Where else are there any funds coming from for the public benefit programs other than federal funding? Even private funds donated have to be converted to federal funds by being deposited into a federal fund and being converted to an asset of the federal fund. Including any child on whose behalf such benefits are claimed by another person. On whose behalf, including any child on whose behalf such benefits are claimed by another person. I'm the one claiming them on behalf of that child. See, what happened, folks, is at the enumeration at birth, a child was created, and the states say they adopted the child they founded, and they founded it in legal form. That's its foundation. Do you understand now? It's a fictional foundation. It needs to be corrected, and then anything that's remainder, which is everything you would have put into it in your lifetime as the benefactor that gave to the beneficiary, built on a false foundation. Equity abhors a forfeiture. You should get all of that back. That is known as then you're supposed to revert it in a merger with the new private estate and trust. And that's based on the reasonable, logical, generation skipping trust that what is rightfully yours would have inherently been passed on by your father and your forefathers, and not by some legal, probated administration of that estate. So now that we know about the evidence, procedure, and certification for payments, and like I said, that certification for payments, that's that birth certificate that we get from the Health and Human Services through the state Bureau of Vital Statistics, Secretary of State, when we call up and order it for $25 a piece. We attach, I guess, first it's authentication at the federal level, and then they get their attachment, and then you make your attachment of the affidavit of amending the records, making the corrections through a proper declaration, because what was clarified in that legal record is all fiction. So we need to declare it by placing supplemental facts that will supersede it. So the next one is 31 U.S. Code. Again, that's money and finance. 3128, proof of death to support payment. See, when it comes to estates and their administration in probate, it goes bid bond, performance bond, payment bond, just like all other public services in public trust. In that bid bond, they put the name of the estate down for the bid, which continues on for the performance bond, guaranteeing that they perform the administration of the estate by properly calling out to the heirs and giving notice to any possible heirs out there that they have abandoned property that may or may not be theirs. To call those people in before they just go throwing the property into an abandonment fund. So the proof of death to support the payment, and we've talked about this, is that burial permit. There has to be a coroner that puts forth a death certificate allowing for a burial permit to be issued. That burial permit is issued and the estate can be settled. That burial is established upon enumeration at birth, and that is the estate establishment claiming a burial trust in case you die in the hands of the state's care. You are in the hands of the state's care through their welfare program. Yet somehow they don't know the necessity of life. They're doing it all for the commercial purposes, and they forget about proof of death to support payment. A finding of death made by an officer or employee of the United States government. Again, that birth registration standards doesn't qualify, so they've never gotten notice. But once there's a death certificate issued, they'll get notice, again, as a matter of statistical record and its historical value, to be entered into the National Archives. Another United States citizen died. A finding of death, the census. A finding of death made by an officer or employee of the United States government authorized by law to make the finding is sufficient proof of the death to allow credit in the accounts of Federal Reserve Bank or accountable official of the Department of the Treasury in a case involving the transfer, exchange, reissue, redemption, or payment of obligations of the government, including obligations guaranteed by the government for which the Secretary of Treasury acts as the transfer agent. So we know the Secretary of Treasury is that transfer agent. That's why I say hand it over to the United States for clearance, automated clearinghouse, the Treasury. So the Secretary of Treasury as the transfer agent to do all the collections of all the creditors and making all parties whole. And when all parties are made whole, including myself, for paying into a system where I wasn't supposed to, nor was required to, nor was I qualified to. So let's talk about that CAF, the Centralized Authorization File. CAF number is a unique 9-digit identification number and is assigned the first time you file a third-party authorization with the IRS. Again, folks, the enumeration at birth, the assignment of a Social Security number, which is a tax identification number, has a master file with the IRS. It's all for income tax purposes, that resident, not for Social Security purposes. Social Security is just a benefit plan that attaches to it that dupes you into believing that you have benefits above and beyond the taxes. No, you have to pay for those benefits by applying through the tax system. This is what the presumption lays, is that you are a taxpayer. A taxpayer. Whose taxes are you paying? Are they taxes on your own estate if your own estate doesn't exist until you're deceased? See, your real and personal effects encompass the entire estate. A letter is sent to you informing you of your assigned CAF number. Use your assigned CAF number on all future authorizations. So it's a lot like a redress number from the Homeland Security. Then it says, ability to modify authority. The centralized authorization file allows the input of codified additional acts authorized on a Form 2848, line 5A. Taxpayers should be clear with regard to additional acts authorized and to which representative it applies. Now, before I go any further, I do want to emphasize here that though I'm going over these forms, I am not saying that you should, need to, or are required to, or anything, use these forms. I always prefer to be able to read them and put it in an affidavit form, the information that they're looking for on that form, in my own handwriting, if I can do that. Some of these forms you might think are necessary, but again, they're going to consider you as a taxpayer. You cannot be the taxpayer. Understand the fiction of the legal entities. It is merely a representation, and if you're going to take upon that status, you have to understand the capacity of doing so by knowing the proper signatures and stuff. CAF unit addresses. General rule, all states west of the Mississippi processed authorizations in Ogden. All states east of the Mississippi processed authorizations in Memphis. Exceptions are Louisiana and Arkansas, which process in Memphis, and Wisconsin processes in Ogden. And international authorizations are processed in Philadelphia. So if you're not a resident, you're not a United States citizen. Again, I'm telling you, you have an international incident on your hand if the local municipal police officer stops you and you know how to assert your diplomatic capacities, plenipotentiary powers, your knowledge, your communication skills, your level-headedness, your Socratic ability to keep things reasonable and logic. I'm not a resident. I am not a United States citizen. And anytime I interact with anyone known as such, or placating or saying that they're such, that would be an international incident. They're placating a nationality. And again, Jeremiah 1:5 of the King James Version of the Bible says, ye are prophets unto the nations. That is an international perspective. Submit forms 28, 48, and 88, 21 online. You can safely upload and submit your client's third-party authorization forms. You and your are individuals who owe a debt to the United States. Clients are legal entities. And again, so I question these in the forms. Common reasons for power of attorney. Rejections. Avoid problems when filing Form 2848, 8821, and Form 706. So we'll be going over that. Frequently used forms and publications, third-party authorizations, purpose, Johnny's College Fund, other third-party authorization. And these are all going to be shown on another form here. We're going to click over to next here, or not next, but here shortly. This one here is the IRS site. Let me grab that other site. And I'll drop this in chat for everybody. The other one. So that's just a plain IRS site where you would go to log into your account. I don't know how this well, you're going to get this in chat. I don't know how well it's going to show on the screen. I'm going to leave this one up there for a while. Anybody wants to get a copy of that. So let's go back to, okay, we got the IRS. And so this is the one where you would go in and sign into your account once you get it set up. And we're not talking about applying for an EIN number, folks. We're going to show you that here. Submitting power of attorney and tax information authorizations. So once you submit that power of attorney, now you're the one that's taking over that representative authorization capacity. Before, even though you were authorized representative for the Social Security, now you're authorized representative for the IRS. Okay, big difference. You have to submit, you have these options to submit power of attorney and tax information authorization. So these are just options being offered. So again, when I say you don't necessarily have to use these forms, you can draw up your own power of attorney form and submit that. And as long as it fulfills the criteria of the information they're looking for on that form, it will suffice. About Form 2848, power of attorney and declaration of representative. Use Form 2848 to authorize an individual to represent you before the IRS. The individual you authorize must be a person eligible to practice before the IRS. So, when you use the Form 2848 to authorize an individual to represent you before the IRS, you are the authorizer. And you have to authorize an agent to do it. Okay? They have to be a transfer agent. They have to be able to do their job. You may authorize a student who works in a qualified low-income taxpayer clinic or student tax clinic program to represent you under a special appearance authorization issued by a taxpayer advocate service. So there's another option. Your authorization of a qualifying representative will also allow that individual to receive and inspect your confidential tax information. So here it says a qualifying representative. Who better to qualify as a representative than yourself? You're the one that knows the tax information. You can file Form 2848, Power of Attorney and Declaration of Representative, if the IRS begins a foreign bank and financial account examination as a result of an income tax examination. There's another one on a third-party authorization purpose. Okay, so let's look at the form. And I'll be darned. I'm going to refresh, folks, and I'll be right back. Okay, let me pull my screen up again. Okay. So we got the form here, and this is the Power of Attorney and Declaration of Representative. See, it's got the OMB number up here. Revised January 2021, Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service. So we're dealing with the Treasury and the Internal Revenue Service. And each one of those office addresses they gave for the IRS, Ogden, Utah, Memphis, Tennessee, and Philadelphia, all are Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service branches like that. Okay, Power of Attorney. A separate Form 2848 must be completed for each taxpayer. So the form is for the taxpayer. Form 2848 will not be honored for any purpose other than representation before the IRS. So what other purposes can you use it for other than representation before the IRS? Think about what it just said there, folks. Taxpayer information must sign and date this form on page 2, line 7. Taxpayer name and address, taxpayer identification numbers. This is where you would start using that CAF number. You would no longer give them the Social Security number. You've got a CAF number. You just took over it. Now you get to use the CAF number. Hereby appoints the following representative as attorneys in fact. The representative must sign and date this form at page 2, part 2. Click if to be sent copies of notices and communications. Check if to be sent copies of notices and communications. Evidently, you can name different representatives. Note, IRS sends notices and communications to only 2 representatives. Okay. To represent the taxpayer before the Internal Revenue Service and perform the following acts. You are required to complete line 3. Except for the acts described in line 5B, I authorize my representatives to receive and inspect my confidential tax information and to perform acts I can perform with respect to the tax matters described below. For example, my representatives shall have the authority to sign any agreements, consents, or similar documents. Description of matter: income, employment, payroll, excise, estate, gift, whistleblower, practitioner, discipline, PLR, FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, civil penalty, SEC 4980H, shared responsibility payment, etc. See instructions. So they'll have something about that on the instruction page. And again, folks, this is stuff you should be looking up. There's what we're looking at right here for the PDF. This is Form 2848, Power of Attorney and Declaration. The link is posted. You must attach a copy of any power of attorney you want to remain in effect. This would only be relative to IRS issues, though. And again, remember, folks, I was telling you, taxes and insurances are prepaid. This stuff's all prepaid, folks. It's already done. There's already an estate set up that's holding credits, generation skipping trusts, and they're just passing it down the line through the connected minor accounts. There's already credits there through your mom's account, your mom's account, your mom's account, however long it goes back where they established this system. The next one is the 8821 they were talking about, and this is the Tax Information Authorization. Again, because you're the one that authorizes this stuff, no one else. They're not supposed to be doing it and telling you they're authorized. They're not. They have to have specific authorization, and that is through a power of attorney giving them authorization. Without that power of attorney, they don't have any. Taxpayer name and address again. Designees. If you wish to name more than 2 designees, attach a list to this form. Check here if a list of additional designees attached. Again, all the stuff. And notice here they have a CAF number, a P.I.G.S.C.U.N.T.S telephone, fax number. What is a P.I.G.S.C.U.N.T? Let me look at that and see if we can find what that is. Oh, preparer tax identification number. Okay. Each designee is authorized to inspect and or receive confidential tax information for the type of tax, forms, periods, and specific matters you list below. See the line 3 instructions. By checking here, I authorize access to my IRS records by an intermediate service provider. So you have to use the intermediary. They're the ones authorized to hold and to have and hold those records, not you. They have information pertaining to you, and you can get a copy of that record, but that's not the intent that I'm putting forth, is that you get a copy of that record, but rather to help expunge that record so that those records aren't being used against you anymore. Specific use not recorded on the centralized authorization file. If the tax information authorization is for a specific use not recorded on CAF, check this box. See the instructions. If you check this box, skip line 5. Retention, revocation of prior tax information authorizations. If the line 4 box is checked, skip this line. If the line 4 box isn't checked, the IRS will automatically revoke all prior tax information authorizations. So if you don't check this one, IRS will automatically revoke on file unless you check line 5. And attach a copy of tax information authorizations that you want to retain. So I would check this. No, let's see here. Line will automatically revoke all prior tax information. To revoke a prior tax information authorization without submitting, there wasn't a prior tax information authorization. So check this box. Authorization, specific use, correction of records. Taxpayer signature signed by a corporate officer, partner, guardian, partnership representative, or designated individual applicable, executor, receiver, administrator, trustee, or individual other than the taxpayer. I certify that I have the legal authority to execute this form with respect to the tax matters and tax periods shown on line 3 above. Signature and print name. Or individual other than the taxpayer, I certify that I have the legal authority to execute this form with respect to the tax matters and the tax periods shown on line 3 above. Why is that? Because I've got a Social Security number and an enumeration at birth to establish that that tax record is a matter of estate property that isn't in existence yet. Yet they have convinced me through indoctrination, like many other people, that I have to pay taxes during my lifetime, when that's false. The next one is the United States estate and generation skipping transfer tax return. That form 706 they mentioned along with the other first two, and that's what we're talking about. That United States business is a United States estate as a business, estate of a citizen or resident of the United States. And that is the presumption that has been laid on the record. And so that United States citizen resident is issuing a form of a generation skipping transfer tax return. Okay, we've been filling out 1040s all our life. Come to find out we're supposed to fill out a 1040V. So we're going to do some 1040V action as well as some 1040X action. Not that we're going to use the forms. Again, these are just forms that give us, let me show you something here, name of executor. So the executor is executing the estate as a probate matter. Executor's Social Security number. Decedent's last name, little. Decedent's Social Security number. See how that works? You're going to be putting year domicile established, date of birth, date of death. There is no death. But the United States estate, through a resident in the state, in a record known as a decedent record. And this is the importance of requiring the live numinant and decedent numinant when we request that Social Security statement and the tax information and everything that we're trying to pull that record. They know it as a decedent numitant, and you can get a decedent numitant just by requesting it. They have a form for it. However, um, before you do that, you should get the live numitant. Otherwise, they don't tend to give you the live numitant. Oh, you already got the decedent numitant. That means it's already done. You can no longer get a live numitant because you're no longer live. I know a couple of people that ran into that problem. I don't know if they've fixed it yet, even. Name and location of court where will was probated or estate administered. Case number. I could go back to the adoption when I was 10 years old. I can go back and get that record. Oof. If decedent died, test date, check here. And attach a certified copy of the will. If you extended the time to file this Form 706, check here. If you extended the time to file this 706 form. If Schedule R1 is attached, check here. If you are estimating the value of assets included in the gross estate on line 1 pursuant to the special rule of regulation, section 20.2010-2A7II, check here. So you would have to look at that and find out. Total gross estate less exclusion. Yeah, see, we really don't need this stuff. We just need them to understand that we want to reconcile the United States estate established as a United States business pursuant to a generation skipping transfer tax, because all those taxes I was indoctrinated into paying aren't going anywhere but to a false patronymical estate, and I deserve them back. I wasn't associated, in fact, with that except through an indoctrination. Now that I know better, I know I cannot include myself in it because I cannot fulfill the oath requirements to perform the functions of public office. Then I can't. I'm sorry. We have to correct the records and admit it for its impossibilities and inconsistencies that do not allow me to act in such manner. The next one, as I said, is the amended U.S. individual income tax return. And like I said, the 1040s that we've been filling out, and then of course we need, I think, to do a 1040V as a voucher on the full tax record. Something along the, collecting up the full tax record so that it has a existence, a recognition, a default where they can't dismiss the record because of some other activity. So it has to come to be validated first for the information that's there so that we can attack that information for expungement. In expunging that information, it still holds that value that I put into the system by paying those taxes and Social Security. So that value needs to be returned during that expungement because it's not rightfully theirs. Okay? So then we do the amended so that any future income tax is recognized by the actual new title under that reversion and merger of the private estate, now being held by the proper judicial title holder who has legal title, whereas the United States holds equity title. Equity. Capital of Postal Service is the equity of the United States, so therefore they're supposed to have the legal title while United States holds equitable title. They even ask you for presidential campaign. And notice they say your, and that's again why I don't recommend using these forms, because in these forms they're using specific terms that imply that you are an individual that owes a debt to the United States, when in fact the debt that is owed is a debt owed back to you for the imperfect gift. Equity does not allow for an imperfect gift. Equity abhors a forfeiture. Equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. In that intent to fulfill an obligation, they failed to fulfill the obligation of educating the people on how to run this business, on state business. So let's see here. The next one is request for transcript of tax return. Like I said, the live numitant, the decedent numitant, the state Social Security statement, and then this is a tax transcript. 4506T. And again, just a suggestion to print these documents out so you can get the information and write up your own affidavits pursuant to these. Transcript requested. Entire the tax form number here, 1040, 1065, 1120, etc., and check the appropriate box below. Enter only one tax form number per request. The only thing I've ever filled out as tax forms was 1040 EZs. I always made them real nice and simple. Return transcript, which includes most of the line items of a tax return as filed with the IRS. A tax return transcript does not reflect changes made to the account after the return is processed. Transcripts are only available for the following returns: Form 1040 series, Form 1065s, Form 1120s, 1120As, 1120H, 1120L, and 1120S. Return transcripts are available for the current year and returns processed during the prior 3 years or 3 processing years. Most requests will be processed within 10 business days. Okay. Account transcript, which contains information on the financial status of the account, such as payments made on the account, penalty assessments, and adjustments made by you or the IRS after the return was filed. Return information is limited to items such as tax liability and estimated tax payments. Account transcripts are available for most returns. Most requests will be processed within 10 days. Transcript of the account and record of account, which provides the most detailed information as it is a combination of the return transcript and the account transcript. Available for current year and 3 prior tax years. Most requests will be processed within 10 business days. So this one here is again only available for current 3 years, just like this one. This one here is accounts are available for most returns, and it's for the entire account. Form W-2s, Form 1099 series, and Form 1098 series, or Form 5498 series transcripts. The IRS can provide a transcript that includes data from these information returns. State and local information is not included with the Form W-2 information. The IRS may be able to provide this information or this transcript information for up to 10 years. Information for the current year is generally not available until the year after it is filed with the IRS. For example, W-2 information for 2016 filed in 2017 will likely not be available from the IRS until 2018. If you need W-2 information for retirement purpose, you should contact the Social Security Administration. Okay? So they'll have that record as well. Most requests will be processed within 10 business days. Caution, if you need a copy of Form W-2 or Form 1099, you should first contact the payer. What's that telling you, folks? Who gave you the W-2, W-4s? Who gave you the W-2, W-4s? You should first contact the payer. To get a copy of the Form W-2 or Form 1099 filed with your return, you must use Form 4506 and request a copy of your return, which includes all attachments. Oh, yeah. A Form 4506. Is that different than a 4506T? To get a copy of the Form W-2 or Form 1099 filed with your return, you must use a Form 4506. So those that need to use or want to use a W-2 or 1099, as in the case of a 1099A and a 1099 OID, original issue discount, based upon the original issue dates when these payments were made, and now you've got a coupon for repayment. Okay, the next one is the third-party authorization levels of authority as it relates to that 1040X. Checkbox authority applies to Form 1040X. Amended U.S. individual income tax return. Just like amending the Social Security record, you got to amend the U.S. individual income tax return. We're going to amend it by letting you know who the boss is. If filed within the 1 year period following the original due date of the related Form 1040 with no extensions. And then this is the one I was telling you about. It's got a nice little chart down here. It gives you all the Form 2848, Form 8821, oral tax information authorization. Again, like I said, folks, you do not even have to do this in writing. You do not have to use these forms. You can do an oral tax information authorization granted by taxpayer calling 1-800-829-1040 for individuals or 1-800-829-4933 for business entities. They're both businesses. Individuals, records maintained on individuals known as residents of the state who are operating business affairs, presumed to be a United States business because they are granted a United States citizenship. Third-party designee or checkbox authorization is granted directly on tax return forms. So you have an oral tax information authorization process of letting your yay be your yay and your nay be your nay. And you don't even have to do Form 8821 or 2848. If they want it in writing, they can get transcripts from the telephone call. The only one that would be on the end of this phone call that would be able and aptly give them all of the information required that they would request, including mom and dad's name, all kinds of particulars that might be pretty private data information, would be the one to call this number. Now, I imagine if you call this number, they might send a representative to your door because they're going to want a physical address where they can come visit you or send mail to. Once they get that address, they're going to want physical evidence or proof. So they might want to come knocking on your door. So it's imperative, again, even if you have an oral tax information authorization, you be prepared to meet people face to face like real men. This is not a way to get out of meeting people face to face or doing documentation or paperwork. Again, don't believe me, don't believe the neighbor, don't believe the government. For crying out loud, don't believe your mother. Do your research so you know, and be prepared to do the work, because faith without works is dead. So the last one I'm going to go over here, again, like I mentioned earlier, just like the IRS authorization, in that we're going to do a request for Social Security statement. Again, an OMB number provided, and this is 7 of 2023. So this is the most recent one. Within 4 to 6 weeks after you return this form, we will send you a record of your earning history, an estimate of how much you have paid in Social Security taxes, an estimate, and estimates of benefits you and your family may be eligible for now and in the future. How come they're only giving you estimates? They're going to give you a record of your earning history. And then they're also going to get an estimate of how much you have paid. They should have an exact amount according to all those checks that they have on record from employers of what they took out of those checks. We hope you will find the statement useful in planning your financial future. I hope I do too, because that statement is going to have all kinds of insurance credits, tax credits, unearned income credits, maybe even have some educational credits or even further employment credits. I don't know. FICA credits, Social Security credits that I paid into it, both through that fiat currency. Other credits such as fines, fees, and penalties through the administrative courts. All the taxes, child support. So anyway, folks, let me grab that link. That is the Social Security statement. And there is that link for that one. So I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's stream. Yeah, you don't need a DBA name. You establish the trust, and you start using that trust name to keep it on a little FBU trust. And that's what I do business in from now on. That owns all the property. I'm the beneficiary of that trust, and I get to use and possess the property according to its authority, because I gave it authority to do so. I'm the benefactor. The record is the beneficiary. Would you like to see my record versus your record? That's why we need to correct that record. That record is a matter of doing business. My record is a matter of trust and beneficiary use and possession. So, like I said, it was a little bit longer than I wanted, and it did not go out on Keith Little or Heckle-Bus channel. So please hit that like, share, and subscribe button, folks. I'll have to get away to upload it onto those two channels later. And then, of course, hopefully I will get this StreamYard thing issue figured out with Google, YouTube, StreamYard, whoever is doing it, and figure out why. I guess I am not the only one that it's happened to, so hopefully it's just a some kind of policy change or something that we're not aware of. But hopefully it'll be resolved soon. Yeah, that's what oath? Eric asks what oath when you are presumed under that licensure or the state ID. The way the law is written and reads, you're technically on state business. You're performing the functions of public office, and that's why you're required to have a license, pursuant to intent things like that. And if you don't understand the language, you've been duped in it. These are implied contracts. And then once you apply, now they become adhesion contracts where they hold them to you, or hold you to them, and you really don't have much say in it until you have the knowledge to rebut them appropriately. Let's remember, folks, LII.WEX puts out legal fiction get to my right page here. Legal fiction. Again, Cornell Law School, LII.WEX. In other words, Westlaw. Legal fiction. A legal fiction is an assumption and acceptance of something as fact by a court, although it may not be true, to allow a rule to operate or be applied in a manner that differs from its original purpose, while leaving the letter of the law unchanged. Reasons for creating a legal fiction can vary, but legal fictions are typically designed to achieve convenience, consistency, equity, or justice. For example, where a court cannot exercise in personam jurisdiction over a defendant, it can bring that defendant under its jurisdiction via quasi in rem subtype 2 jurisdiction. The latter is a form of personal jurisdiction that uses a defendant's property to satisfy a claim against them and is a legal fiction because it treats the owner of the property as a defendant, although the subject of the suit is technically the property itself. Oops. Another common legal fiction is legal personhood or corporate personhood in business law. Were we not just talking about the master file, central authorization file, IRS, insurances, Social Security, taxes? Aren't those all business terms? Incorporation of businesses required the creation of legal fiction of corporate personhood so that corporations could sue and be sued in courts. You are not the corporation. The corporation is a fiction, and the minimum birth registration standards fail that United States business. So anyway, folks, that brings me to the end of the stream for tonight. I hope you guys are able to watch these videos and rewatch them until you get it. It's all about knowing how this stuff works. And again, I'm not pushing these forms. I'm pushing the information in them that shows you they don't have any authority. And the way you pose your authority is by creating your own record, your own manifest. And when they want to keep record of certain things, there are things that you can use: a firm book through the Postal Service, a manual dispatch. So think about this stuff, folks. And remember, I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. I say I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That's on you. So may God bless you and have a good night.